The sound of splintering ice echoes across the frozen lake like gunfire in the night. Some men spend their whole lives waiting for a moment that will define them. Others have that moment thrust upon them when they least expect it, when the bills are piling up, when hope feels like a luxury they can't afford, and when the only thing standing between them and complete defeat is the next paycheck. Steam rises from twisted metal as a stranger's blood stains the snow red. But what happens when saving a life changes everything you thought you knew about your own? When pulling someone from the wreckage doesn't just rescue them, it pulls you into a world where billion-dollar empires hang in the balance, where corporate boardrooms become battlefields, and where the price of doing what's right might cost you everything you fought to protect in the distance. Helicopter blades slice through the Montana darkness. Sometimes the most dangerous rescue isn't the one you make, it's the one that's made for you. Sometimes the crash that changes everything isn't the plane hitting the ice, it's the moment you realize there's no going back. The alarm clock's shrill cry pierced the pre-dawn darkness at 4:30 a.m. But Robert "Bobby" Mitchell was already awake. At 48, his body had developed an internal clock that rarely allowed for peaceful sleep anymore. He silenced the alarm before it could wake Tyler in the next room, then sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the foreclosure notice that had arrived yesterday, the third and final warning from Mountain View Credit Union. 60 days. That's all he had left to save the house that had sheltered 3 generations of Mitchells. Bobby's calloused hands reached for the framed photo on his nightstand, Linda smiling at their 10th wedding anniversary, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. 4 years since the drunk driver had taken her. 4 years of struggling to keep their world together for Tyler's sake. "Morning, Lynn," he whispered to the empty room, a ritual that had become as essential as breathing. "Another day." The house creaked around him as he moved through the familiar routine, floorboards announcing each step despite his attempts at stealth. In the kitchen, he opened his wallet, $23 in change, plus a crumpled receipt for Tyler's textbooks that had cost more than Bobby made in a week at Henderson's garage. Bobby assembled Tyler's lunch with military precision, 2 peanut butter sandwiches, an apple, and the last granola bar from a box he couldn't afford to replace. He left a note scrawled on a napkin. "Proud of you, son. Design project looking great. Love, Dad." These daily messages were his way of being present when work kept him absent. By 5:15, Bobby was behind the wheel of his grandfather's 1995 Ford pickup, coaxing the engine to life with the patience of someone who understood mechanical temperament. The truck had 280,000 miles and needed a new transmission. But like everything else in Bobby's life, it would have to wait. The drive to Henderson's garage took him through Pine Ridge's quiet downtown, past the diner where he'd take Linda for breakfast every Sunday, past the lake where they'd taught Tyler to fish. Memories lingered in every corner of this small Montana town, some comforting, others painful. "Morning, Bobby," called Earl Henderson as Bobby punched his time card at exactly 5:30. "Got the Williamson's RV waiting? Engines making sounds like a dying moose." Bobby nodded, already reaching for his coveralls. "I'll take a listen." For the next 8 hours, Bobby lost himself in the familiar world of engines and diagnostics. Here, problems had solutions. Unlike the stack of medical bills from Linda's final months that still haunted him, unlike the mortgage payments that kept him awake nights, cars made sense. You identified the problem. You fixed it. You moved on. At 2 p.m., Bobby washed the grease from his hands and drove across town to Mountain View Security, where his second job awaited. The night shift paid better than the garage, but it meant sleeping in fragments and seeing Tyler only in passing moments between obligations. "Bobby," nodded Frank Martinez, the day shift supervisor, as they met at the guard station overlooking Pine Ridge's small industrial district. "Quiet day. Weather service is calling for a nasty storm tonight, though could get interesting." Bobby settled into the guard shack, reviewing the overnight protocols while fighting the fatigue that had become his constant companion. Through the windows, he could see storm clouds gathering over Flathead Lake, their dark mass promising the kind of weather that made flying dangerous. His phone buzzed a text from Tyler. "Dad, finished the cargo ship efficiency project. Professor wants to submit it to the national competition. Thanks for believing in me. Bobby smiled. The first genuine one all day. Tyler had inherited Linda's brilliance and Bobby's mechanical intuition, a combination that could take him far if Bobby could just keep the lights on long enough. At 6 p.m., Bobby called Mrs. Chen, the elderly neighbor who watched Tyler after school, in exchange for help with her yard work. How's he doing? Fine, fine, she assured him in her accented English. Working very hard on school project. That boy's going places. Bobby, if I can afford to send him there, Bobby thought but didn't say. The storm arrived earlier than forecast, turning Bobby's quiet security shift into something more eventful. By 8 p.m., snow was falling heavily, and the wind had picked up enough to rattle the guard shack's windows. Bobby made his hourly rounds, checking locks and watching for anything unusual in the swirling white darkness. It was during his 11 p.m. patrol that he heard the distinctive whine of a small aircraft engine struggling against the storm. Bobby stopped his truck and rolled down the window, peering into the snow-filled sky. The sound was getting closer, and it didn't sound right. A flash of lightning illuminated a small plane fighting to maintain altitude, its path erratic against the storm-darkened sky. Bobby reached for his radio to call the local airfield, but before he could key the microphone, the engine sound changed to a sputtering cough, then died completely. The silence that followed was ominous. Bobby threw his truck into gear and raced toward the lake, following the approximate trajectory of the doomed aircraft. His headlights cut through the swirling snow as he navigated the access road that wound down to Flathead Lake's shoreline. The impact, when it came, was a sickening crunch of metal followed by the splash of something heavy hitting water. Bobby abandoned his truck and ran toward the sound, his flashlight beam dancing wildly as he stumbled through knee-deep snow. The plane had crashed through the ice near the shore, its nose submerged while the tail section remained visible above the black water. Steam rose from the wreckage as hot metal met frigid lake water, and Bobby could see movement in the cockpit. Someone was alive in there. Without hesitation, Bobby shed his heavy coat and boots. The water was shockingly cold, even through his thermal underwear, but his Navy training kicked in as he waded toward the wreckage. The ice was thin here, cracking ominously under his weight as he approached the plane. Through the shattered cockpit window, he could see a woman slumped over the controls, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. She was unconscious but breathing, trapped in her seat as water began seeping into the cabin. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Bobby shouted over the wind. "I'm going to get you out." The woman stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open to reveal sharp intelligence even in her disoriented state. What? What happened?" "Your plane went down. We need to move fast. This ice won't hold much longer." Bobby worked frantically to free her from the wreckage, his fingers numb from the cold as he struggled with the seat belt release mechanism. The plane shifted ominously, settling deeper into the water with each passing second. Finally, the belt gave way. Bobby carefully lifted the woman from the pilot's seat, noting that her expensive flight suit and watch marked her as someone of means. But right now, she was just another person in need of help. Carrying her toward shore, Bobby felt the ice crack beneath his feet. Cold lake water rushed over his boots, then his knees, as the surface gave way. For a terrifying moment, he thought they might both go under, but his feet found solid ground just as the plane's tail section disappeared beneath the dark water with a final, bubbling sigh. On shore, Bobby quickly assessed the woman's injuries. Possible concussion, definitely hypothermic, but alive. He wrapped her in his coat and carried her to his truck, cranking the heater to maximum as he drove toward Pine Ridge's small medical clinic. "My briefcase," the woman mumbled as consciousness flickered back. "Important documents." "I'm sorry," Bobby said gently. "There wasn't time. The plane went under." A look of distress crossed her features before exhaustion claimed her again. Dr. Sarah Kim met them at the clinic, her professional calm masking concern as she examined the patient. "Mild concussion, early hypothermia, but she'll be fine," she assured Bobby after an hour of treatment. "You saved her life. A few more minutes in that water. Bobby nodded, suddenly aware of his own exhaustion. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. His shift had ended hours ago, and Tyler would be wondering where he was. I should go, Bobby said. She'll need someone to contact her family. Already handled, Dr. Kim replied with a strange expression. Quite an interesting patient you brought me. Bobby, her people should be here soon. Bobby drove home through the quiet morning streets, trying to process the night's events. He'd done what anyone would do, what his Navy training had prepared him for. But something about the woman nagged at him, the quality of her clothing, the expensive watch, the way she'd mentioned important documents, even while semi-conscious. Tyler was waiting in the kitchen when Bobby walked through the door, his face tight with worry. Dad, where were you, Mrs. Chen said you never came home. Emergency at work, Bobby said, ruffling his son's dark hair. Someone needed help. Tyler studied his father's face with the perception of someone who'd learned to read between the lines. Are you okay? You look different. Bobby managed a tired smile. Just tired, son. Long night. As Tyler gathered his books for school, Bobby collapsed into his recliner, fully clothed and still damp from his early morning rescue. He was asleep within minutes, dreamless and exhausted. The sound of helicopters woke him 3 hours later. Bobby stumbled to his front window and froze. His modest driveway was lined with black SUVs. 2 helicopters circled overhead like mechanical vultures. Men in expensive suits spoke into earpieces while maintaining perimeter positions around his property. Dad, Tyler called from the kitchen, his voice tight with alarm. There are people outside. Before Bobby could respond, a firm knock echoed from the front door. He opened it to find a woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, flanked by 2 serious-looking men who had security written all over them. Mr. Mitchell, the woman asked. I'm Margaret Walsh, executive assistant to Catherine Rothschild. I believe you pulled Ms. Rothschild from a plane crash last night? Bobby nodded slowly. Is she all right? Thanks to you, yes, Ms. Rothschild would very much like to thank you personally. She's waiting in the car. Bobby looked past the assistant to see a silver Bentley at the end of his driveway. The rear window rolled down, revealing the woman he'd rescued, now alert and dressed in what was obviously very expensive clothing. Catherine Rothschild stepped out of the Bentley with the grace of someone accustomed to commanding attention. Even after her ordeal, she moved with purpose and authority. Bobby had seen that kind of presence before in admirals and generals, people who shaped the world around them rather than being shaped by it. Mr. Mitchell, she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. I owe you my life. Bobby, ma'am, and you don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same. A slight smile played at the corners of her mouth. I've spent 30 years evaluating people. Bobby, very few would have done what you did. She glanced around at his property, the peeling paint, the sagging porch steps, the old pickup truck that had seen better decades. May I come in? There are things we need to discuss. Bobby hesitated, acutely aware of the difference between his world and hers. But Tyler appeared at his shoulder, curiosity overcoming caution. Tyler, Bobby said, this is Ms. Rothschild. Mrs. Rothschild, my son Tyler. Catherine's expression warmed as she studied the young man. Your father is a hero, Tyler. What he did last night, it was extraordinary. Tyler's chest swelled with pride. That's just Dad. He's always helping people. They settled in Bobby's modest living room. The contrast between Catherine's polished elegance and the worn furniture stark, but somehow not uncomfortable. Margaret Walsh positioned herself near the window while the security team maintained their discreet perimeter. First, Catherine began, I want to address the immediate, your truck needs repair, your house needs work, and I suspect your finances are strained. Consider that handled. Bobby stiffened. Ma'am, I appreciate the gesture, but I can't accept charity. It's not charity. Bobby, It's compensation. Catherine's tone carried the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. My life is worth considerably more than a truck transmission and some home improvements. I don't understand what you do, Bobby said carefully, but I can tell you're successful. I'm just a mechanic and security guard trying to keep my head above water. Catherine nodded to Margaret, who opened a tablet and showed Bobby a news article. The headline read, Rothschild Maritime reports record year, $15 billion in global shipping contracts. Bobby read the article with growing amazement. Catherine Rothschild wasn't just successful, she was one of the most powerful business leaders in the world. Rothschild Maritime and Logistics controlled the largest private shipping fleet on Earth, moving everything from consumer goods to military equipment across every ocean. I started as a secretary, Catherine said quietly, watching Bobby process the information. 25 years ago, I was filing papers for minimum wage, supporting my sick mother. I built this company through persistence, intelligence, and the help of good people along the way. Tyler leaned forward, fascinated. You own ships, 237 vessels, Catherine confirmed. Cargo ships, tankers, specialized military transport. We move about 15% of the world's seaborne trade. But why are you here? Bobby asked. I mean, really here, talking to us. Catherine's expression grew serious. Because last night wasn't an accident. Bobby, someone tried to kill me, and they very nearly succeeded. The weight of her words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Bobby felt Tyler tense beside him, suddenly understanding that their quiet life had intersected with something dangerous. The plane was sabotaged, Catherine continued. My head of security confirmed it this morning. Someone wanted me dead, and they chose their moment carefully, a storm that would make rescue unlikely, a crash site that would hide evidence. Who would do that? Tyler asked, his voice small. Catherine's jaw tightened. Someone who stands to gain from my death. Tomorrow, our board of directors votes on a merger proposal that would essentially dissolve Rothschild Maritime. I've been fighting it for months. Bobby's military instincts kicked in. You think someone on your board is behind this? Not the board directly, Catherine replied. But Marcus Blackwood, CEO of Atlantic Global Shipping, has been very aggressive in his pursuit of our company. He's offered 3 times what we're worth. But I've refused. A merger would destroy everything I've built. Margaret cleared her throat softly. Ma'am, we should discuss security arrangements. Catherine nodded, then turned back to Bobby. Which brings me to why I'm really here. I need someone I can trust. Someone outside my usual circle who can't be bought or intimidated. Bobby, I'd like to offer you a position as my personal security consultant. Bobby laughed, a short bark of disbelief. Ma'am, I guard a parking lot and fix trucks. I'm not qualified for corporate security. You're a former Navy petty officer, specialized in damage control and emergency response, Catherine said, surprising him with her knowledge. You served on the USS Reagan as chief engineering specialist. You've seen combat, handled crisis situations, and last night you proved you can think clearly under extreme pressure. How do you know all that? I had my people run a background check this morning, Catherine admitted. I needed to know who I was dealing with. What I found was a decorated veteran who gave up a promising Navy career to care for his sick wife, who's been working 2 jobs to keep his family afloat, and who raised a son any parent would be proud of. Tyler glowed at the praise, but Bobby felt exposed, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. The position would pay $200,000 annually, Catherine continued, plus full benefits and educational support for Tyler. Your job would be to provide practical security assessment and serve as my personal protection specialist. The number hit Bobby like a physical blow. $200,000 was more than he'd made in the last 4 years combined. It would save the house, pay for Tyler's college, give them the life Linda had wanted for their son. I need time to think, Bobby said finally. Of course, Catherine stood gracefully. But Bobby, I meant what I said about the immediate concerns. Your truck, the house repairs, Tyler's college fund. Those aren't contingent on your decision about employment. They're simply my way of saying thank you. After Catherine and her entourage departed, Bobby sat in his kitchen staring at the business card she'd left. Catherine Rothschild, Chairman and CEO, Rothschild Maritime and Logistics, a phone number with more digits than seemed necessary. Tyler couldn't contain his excitement. Dad, did you hear what she said? $200,000. And she said she'd help with college. It's not that simple, son, Bobby replied, though part of him was already imagining what that money could mean for their future. Why not? She needs help. You're good at helping people. It's perfect. Bobby wished he shared Tyler's optimism, but his military training had taught him to be suspicious of perfect opportunities. Still, as he looked around their modest kitchen with its patched linoleum and secondhand appliances, he couldn't deny the appeal of Catherine's offer. That evening, as Bobby prepared for another security shift, Tyler showed him something that changed his perspective entirely. Dad, look what I found online. On Tyler's laptop screen was a news article from 3 months earlier. Rothschild Maritime wins $2 billion military transport contract. The article detailed how Catherine's company had beaten out several competitors, including Atlantic Global Shipping, to secure exclusive transport rights for military equipment and personnel. That's a lot of money, Tyler observed. Enough to kill for, Bobby agreed grimly, understanding now why someone might want Catherine dead. His phone rang an unknown number. Bobby, Catherine's voice was tense. I need your help. Someone broke into my hotel suite an hour ago. Security footage shows 3 men, professionals. They didn't take anything, but they planted listening devices throughout the room. Are you safe now? For the moment, I'm at the airport, about to fly back to Seattle. But Bobby, they also accessed your personnel files at Henderson's garage and the security company. Whoever is behind this knows about you now. A chill ran down Bobby's spine. What are you saying? I'm saying you and Tyler might be in danger simply because you helped me. These people are thorough, and they don't leave loose ends. Bobby looked at Tyler, who was listening intently to the one-sided conversation. What do you want me to do? Come to Seattle. Tonight, I'll send a plane. You and Tyler will be safer here, and I could use someone I trust nearby. Bobby closed his eyes, feeling the weight of decision. Stay in Pine Ridge and hope the danger passed, or step into Catherine's world and embrace the unknown. We'll be ready in an hour, he said finally. The private jet that arrived at Pine Ridge's small airport 2 hours later was unlike anything Bobby had ever seen. The cabin was appointed with leather seats and polished wood trim, with enough space for a dozen passengers. Tyler's eyes went wide as they settled into seats that cost more than Bobby's truck. This is incredible, Dad, Tyler whispered as the plane taxied for takeoff. Bobby nodded absently, his attention focused on the 2 security personnel who had accompanied the aircraft. Both men had the bearing of ex-military, probably special forces based on their quiet competence and watchful eyes. First time on a private jet? Asked the older of the 2, a graying man with kind eyes and a southern accent. First time on any jet, Bobby admitted. I'm Bobby Mitchell. This is my son, Tyler. Tom Bradley, the man replied, shaking hands with both of them. Former Marine, now head of Miss Rothschild's personal security. Heard about what you did last night. Hell of a thing. As the plane climbed into the night sky, Bobby watched the lights of Pine Ridge disappear below. 24 hours ago, his biggest worry had been making the mortgage payment. Now he was flying to Seattle on a billionaire's private jet, drawn into a world of corporate intrigue and potential danger. Mr. Mitchell, the flight attendant, a professional woman in her 30s, approached with a concerned expression. Ms. Rothschild asked me to give you this. Sure. She handed him a sealed envelope marked Urgent, Eyes Only. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message in Catherine's precise handwriting. Bobby, while you were in the air, Marcus Blackwood called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. He's accelerating his timeline. I need you in Seattle not just for security, but because I think your military engineering background might be crucial to what's coming. Trust no one except Tom Bradley until we can sort out who else might be compromised. Catherine Bobby folded the note carefully, his mind racing. Whatever was happening, it was moving faster than anyone had anticipated. He looked at Tyler, who had fallen asleep in his luxurious seat, and wondered what he'd gotten them into. The Rothschild Maritime headquarters rose 47 stories above Seattle's waterfront, its glass and steel facade reflecting the lights of Elliott Bay. Bobby and Tyler were met at the building's private entrance by Tom Bradley, who escorted them through security checkpoints that rivaled anything Bobby had seen in the military. Ms. Rothschild is waiting upstairs, Tom explained as they rode the executive elevator to the top floor. Fair warning, she's been in crisis mode since yesterday. The board meeting is in 3 hours, and Blackwood's been working the phones all night. The elevator opened directly into Catherine's office, a space that managed to be both impressive and surprisingly personal. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Puget Sound, while the walls displayed maritime charts and photographs of ships that obviously held special meaning. Catherine looked up from a conference table covered with documents, her expression showing the strain of the past 36 hours. She'd changed from her earlier outfit into a severe black business suit that made her look every inch the corporate warrior. Bobby, Tyler, thank you for coming, she said, rising to greet them. I know this isn't what you expected when you pulled me out of that lake. No, ma'am, Bobby agreed. But we're here. What do you need? Catherine gestured to the documents spread across the table. These are the technical specifications for Blackwood's proposed fleet integration plan. If the merger goes through, he'll essentially gut our specialized capabilities and turn us into a generic shipping company. Bobby studied the papers, his engineering background allowing him to understand the implications. He's eliminating redundancy and cutting operational costs. Standard corporate efficiency? Exactly. Which would be fine if we were just moving consumer goods. But we're not. Catherine activated a wall display showing a map of global shipping routes. 30% of our business is military transport-sensitive cargo that requires specialized handling and absolute security. Tyler leaned forward, studying the display with fascination. What kind of sensitive cargo? Catherine glanced at Bobby, who nodded slightly. Equipment and personnel for special operations, nuclear materials for power plants and weapons programs, intelligence assets, the kind of cargo that enemies of the United States would kill to intercept or sabotage. And Blackwood wants control of that, Bobby asked. Blackwood wants the contracts, Catherine clarified. But his company doesn't have the security infrastructure or specialized vessels to handle them properly. If the merger goes through, those contracts will likely be transferred to foreign companies with questionable loyalties. Tom Bradley spoke up from his position near the windows. We've got movement outside. 3 black SUVs just pulled up. Catherine checked her watch. Early for the board meeting? Bobby, I need to ask something of you that goes beyond security consultation. What is it? I want you to sit in on the board meeting as my technical advisor. Your background gives you credibility that my usual people lack. You're clearly not a company insider, and your military service speaks to your patriotism. Bobby felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. You want me to help you fight the merger? I want you to help me save a company that's crucial to national security, Catherine corrected. And in the process, yes, fight a takeover that I believe is orchestrated by people who don't have America's best interests at heart. The board meeting convened in Rothschild Maritime's main conference room, a space designed to intimidate with its massive table and formal portraits of the company's history. Bobby found himself seated next to Catherine, acutely aware that he was probably the only person in the room who'd ever actually worked on a ship. Marcus Blackwood entered with the confidence of a man who expected to win. Tall and silver-haired, he moved with the practiced charm of someone accustomed to getting his way through sheer force of personality. Catherine, he said warmly, as if they were old friends rather than bitter rivals. I was so sorry to hear about your accident. Thank goodness you weren't seriously injured. Thank you for your concern. Marcus, Catherine replied coolly. I'd like to introduce Robert Mitchell, my new technical advisor. Blackwood's eyes sharpened as he studied Bobby. Military background, Navy, Bobby confirmed. Engineering specialist. Excellent. Always good to have practical experience in the room. Blackwood's tone was friendly, but Bobby caught the calculating look in his eyes. The meeting began with Marcus presenting his merger proposal with polished efficiency. Atlantic Global would acquire Rothschild Maritime for $8.2 billion, promising shareholders a 30% premium over current market value. The combined company would control nearly 25% of global shipping capacity. The synergies are obvious, Marcus concluded. Reduced overhead, streamlined operations, and enhanced competitive positioning in emerging markets. Catherine stood to respond, her composure absolute despite the stakes involved. Mr. Blackwood's proposal sounds compelling until you examine the details. This merger would eliminate Rothschild's specialized capabilities and compromise our military contracts. With respect, Marcus interjected, military transport represents less than 30% of your revenue. The commercial opportunities far outweigh those concerns. Bobby found himself rising, surprising everyone, including himself. Mr. Blackwood, that 30% includes contracts essential to national security. I've seen what happens when critical logistics fall into the wrong hands. And what exactly are you suggesting, Mr. Mitchell? I'm suggesting that some things are more important than profit margins. The military contracts Ms. Rothschild mentioned, they're not just shipping jobs. They're the backbone of how our forces project power globally. Marcus's friendly demeanor slipped slightly. That's a very emotional argument, but business decisions should be based on financial reality. Should they? Bobby shot back. Because I've noticed that Atlantic Global has some interesting partnerships with Chinese shipping companies. Companies that the Pentagon has flagged as security risks. A murmur ran around the conference table. This wasn't in Marcus's prepared presentation. Those partnerships are purely commercial, Marcus said stiffly. Are they? Catherine asked, suddenly standing again. Because according to naval intelligence, 3 of your Chinese partners have been caught attempting to install surveillance equipment on civilian ships. Marcus's face flushed red. That's classified information you have no right to. Information that's relevant to this board's decision. Catherine cut him off. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Blackwood isn't just proposing a merger. He's proposing to hand control of American military logistics to foreign interests. The room erupted in heated discussion as board members demanded explanations from both sides. Bobby watched Marcus carefully, noting how the man's polished exterior was cracking under pressure. Then Tom Bradley's voice came through Bobby's earpiece. We've got a problem. Building security just went offline, and there are unmarked vehicles surrounding the building. Bobby leaned close to Catherine. We need to leave. Now! But it was too late. The conference room doors burst open as armed men in tactical gear stormed in, their faces hidden behind masks. Nobody move, the lead gunman shouted. Hands where we can see them. Bobby's military training kicked in instantly. He assessed the situation, 6 armed men, civilian hostages, limited exits. The tactical gear was professional quality, suggesting these weren't ordinary criminals. What do you want? Catherine asked, her voice remarkably steady. The vote, the lead gunman replied. The board will vote on Mr. Blackwood's merger proposal. Now, Bobby realized with growing horror that this wasn't a random attack. It was a coordinated effort to force the merger through violence. He caught Catherine's eye and saw his own understanding reflected there. You can't force a legitimate business decision at gunpoint, board member Patricia Hoffman protested. Can't we? The gunman's voice carried amusement. Mr. Blackwood, perhaps you'd like to call for the vote. Marcus stood slowly, his face pale but resolute. I don't condone these methods, but the vote should proceed. All in favor of the merger proposal. Several board members raised their hands immediately, clearly terrified. Others hesitated, looking between the gunman and Catherine. Bobby made his decision. Using the conference table as cover, he lunged toward the nearest gunman, 20 years of combat training guiding his movements. He managed to disarm one attacker before the others could react. but 6 against 1 were impossible odds. "Stop!" the lead gunman shouted, pressing his weapon against Tyler's head. "Or the boy dies." Bobby froze, his heart stopping as he saw his son's terrified face. "Tyler, let him go," Catherine said firmly. "He's not part of this." Everyone sits down, and Mr. Mitchell drops the weapon, the gunman ordered. "Otherwise, this gets very unpleasant." Bobby had no choice. He placed the captured weapon on the table and sat down, his eyes never leaving Tyler. "Now then," the gunman continued, "let's have that vote again." One by one, the board members raised their hands in favor of the merger. Even those who had previously supported Catherine couldn't risk their lives or the lives of others. Within minutes, Rothschild Maritime had been sold at gunpoint. "Excellent," Marcus said, though he looked sick at what had just transpired. "I believe that concludes our business." "Not quite," the lead gunman replied. "Ms. Rothschild and Mr. Mitchell have seen too much. They'll be coming with us." Bobby's mind raced as they were forced from the conference room at gunpoint. The building's security system was still down, and Tom Bradley was nowhere to be seen. Whatever happened next, he and Catherine were on their own. As they were marched toward the service elevator, Bobby caught sight of something that gave him hope: Tyler's reflection in a mirror, making subtle hand signals. His son was communicating in the basic military sign language Bobby had taught him years ago. "Help coming. Stay ready." Somehow, Tyler had managed to contact Tom Bradley or building security. Bobby felt a surge of pride at his son's quick thinking, followed immediately by fear for what might happen if their captors realized what was happening. The service elevator took them to the building's underground garage, where a black van waited with its engine running. Bobby counted 4 more armed men around the vehicle, 10 total, all professionals. "In the van," the lead gunman ordered. "Both of you." As they approached the vehicle, Bobby heard the distinctive sound of tactical boots on concrete. Tom Bradley's voice echoed through the garage. "Drop your weapons, building security." The gunman spun toward the sound, and Bobby seized the moment. He tackled Catherine to the ground behind a concrete pillar just as gunfire erupted throughout the garage. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, muzzle flashes strobing like deadly lightning. "Stay down," Bobby shouted over the noise, shielding Catherine with his body. The firefight lasted less than 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. When silence finally returned, Tom Bradley appeared around the pillar, his weapon raised but no longer firing. "Clear," he called. "Everyone okay?" Bobby helped Catherine to her feet, checking for injuries. "We're fine." "How did you—" "Your son," Tom replied with a grin. "Kid managed to get to building security and raise the alarm. Smart boy." They found Tyler in the security office, pale but unharmed, surrounded by grateful security personnel who had been monitoring the situation on building cameras. "Dad," Tyler rushed to embrace his father. "Are you okay? I saw the guns and—" "You did great." "Son," Bobby said, holding him tight. "Better than great. You saved our lives." Catherine approached them, her composure finally cracking slightly. "Tyler, what you did, it took remarkable courage." "I just remembered what Dad taught me about emergency procedures," Tyler said modestly. Over the next hour, Seattle police and FBI agents swarmed the building. The surviving gunmen were arrested, though they refused to provide information about who had hired them. Marcus Blackwood had disappeared during the chaos, his merger victory now meaningless given the circumstances under which it had been obtained. "The board will reconvene tomorrow," Catherine told Bobby as they watched paramedics tend to the wounded. "Under the circumstances, I think the vote will go rather differently." Bobby nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "What about Blackwood? He'll try again." "Probably," Catherine agreed. "But now we know what we're dealing with, and we know we can trust each other." She turned to face Bobby directly. "My offer still stands. I need someone like you. Bobby, someone who puts principles before profit." Bobby looked at Tyler, who was excitedly recounting the day's events to a patient FBI agent. His son had shown remarkable courage and quick thinking under pressure. Maybe it was time for both of them to embrace a larger world. What exactly would the job involve? Bobby asked. Head of Security Operations, Catherine replied. You'd oversee protection for our key personnel and sensitive cargo. The pay would be $400,000 annually, plus full benefits and an education trust fund for Tyler. The number was even higher than her original offer. $400,000. You've more than proven your worth, Catherine said simply. The question is whether you're ready for this kind of life. Bobby thought about their modest house in Pine Ridge, about the simple certainty of fixing engines and standing security shifts. Then he thought about Tyler's excitement at being part of something important, about the chance to make a real difference in the world. We'll need to go back and get our things, he said finally. Catherine smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression he'd seen from her. I'll arrange for a moving company. Welcome to Rothschild Maritime. Bobby. 6 months later, the Rothschild Maritime Christmas party was held aboard the company's flagship, a converted cruise liner called the Catherine R that served as both a floating headquarters and a showcase for the company's capabilities. Bobby stood on the observation deck, watching Seattle's skyline twinkle in the distance while digesting the magnitude of how much his life had changed. Tyler appeared at his elbow, resplendent in his first real tuxedo. Pretty amazing, isn't it, Dad? It is, Bobby agreed. How are you liking the Maritime Academy? Love it, Tyler said enthusiastically. Professor Martinez says I have a natural understanding of naval architecture, and the other kids are great. They don't care that we didn't grow up with money. Bobby smiled at his son's confidence. The prestigious Pacific Maritime Academy had initially intimidated both of them, but Tyler had thrown himself into his studies with characteristic determination. Any word on your design project? Bobby asked. Tyler's face lit up. That's what I wanted to tell you. The eco-friendly cargo ship design I've been working on, Professor Martinez submitted it to the International Young Naval Architects Competition. And Dad, I won. Bobby felt a surge of pride that threatened to overwhelm him. Tyler, that's incredible. The prize is a full scholarship to MIT's Naval Engineering program, Tyler continued. Can you believe it, MIT? Before Bobby could respond, Catherine appeared beside them, elegant in a midnight blue evening gown that caught the light from the ship's chandeliers. Congratulations, Tyler, she said warmly. I just heard about your competition win. Remarkable achievement. Thank you, Ms. Rothschild. None of this would have been possible without your help. Please, Tyler, we've discussed this. Call me Catherine. She turned to Bobby with a knowing smile. And I believe you have some news to share as well. Bobby felt suddenly nervous, though he wasn't sure why. The Pentagon contract, signed this afternoon, Catherine confirmed. Rothschild Maritime will be handling all classified material transport for the Pacific Fleet. It's the largest military logistics contract in company history. Tyler whooped with excitement, drawing amused glances from other party guests. Dad, do you realize what this means? You're basically running security for the entire Navy. Not the entire Navy, Bobby corrected, though he couldn't hide his own excitement. Just the important stuff. Speaking of important, Catherine said, her tone suddenly more serious, there's something else we need to discuss. Marcus Blackwood escaped federal custody yesterday. Bobby's celebratory mood evaporated instantly. How one coordinated effort during a prisoner transport, professional operation, military precision, he had help from someone with significant resources. Any idea who? Catherine nodded grimly. Intelligence suggests his Chinese partners weren't happy about losing access to our military contracts. They may be planning something significant. Bobby absorbed this information, his mind already shifting into threat assessment mode. What kind of something? Unknown, but given Blackwood's knowledge of our operations, Catherine trailed off, leaving the implications hanging. A new voice interrupted them, Tom Bradley approaching with his usual measured pace. Sorry to interrupt the celebration, but we've got a situation developing. What kind of situation? Bobby asked. Tom handed him a tablet displaying satellite imagery. 3 unidentified vessels approaching our main shipping route through the Strait of Juan de Fuca. They're running dark, no transponders, no radio contact. Bobby studied the images, his naval experience interpreting the tactical formation. They're setting up an intercept pattern, professional naval deployment. For what? Tyler asked, sensing the tension. Catherine's expression had gone cold and calculating. The maritime venture is scheduled to pass through that area in 4 hours, carrying a very special cargo. How special? Bobby asked, though he suspected he already knew. New guidance systems for submarine-launched ballistic missiles, Catherine replied quietly. The kind of technology that could shift the balance of power if it fell into the wrong hands. Bobby felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. 6 months ago, his biggest concern had been making mortgage payments. Now he was potentially facing an act of war against American military assets. What are our options? He asked. We could divert the maritime venture to Victoria, Tom suggested. Canadian waters might discourage aggressive action. Bobby shook his head. If these are state-sponsored actors, they won't be deterred by international boundaries. We need to assume they're willing to risk everything to get that cargo. Then what do you recommend? Catherine asked, and Bobby realized she was genuinely seeking his tactical advice. We fight back, he said simply. The maritime venture has defensive capabilities, right? Standard commercial anti-piracy measures, Tom confirmed. Water cannons, some small arms, but nothing that could handle a coordinated naval attack. Then we level the playing field, Bobby decided. Catherine, can you contact the Coast Guard? Already tried. There's a major storm system moving in from the Pacific. Coast Guard assets are committed to search and rescue operations. Bobby studied the satellite images again, his mind working through tactical possibilities. What other ships do we have in the area? Catherine pulled up a fleet disposition chart on her own tablet. The Seattle Express is about 60 miles south, but it's just a container ship. The Pacific Guardian is closer, but it's in dry dock for maintenance. Wait, Tyler interjected, studying the charts over his father's shoulder. What about the Catherine R? We're already at sea, and this ship has more capabilities than a standard liner. Bobby looked at Tyler with new appreciation. What kind of capabilities? Catherine smiled grimly. She's designed to serve as an emergency command center for maritime operations. Full communication suite, enhanced defensive systems, and a helicopter pad. And she's fast, Tyler added, pointing to the specifications on the chart. 35 knots maximum speed. We could intercept the unknown vessels before they reach the maritime venture. Bobby felt a familiar stirring the excitement of tactical planning, the clarity that came with facing a clear enemy with defined objectives. It's risky. We'd be putting everyone on this ship in danger. Everyone on this ship signed up to work for a company that handles sensitive cargo, Catherine replied. They understand the risks. Around them, the Christmas party continued, guests laughing and dancing while unaware of the crisis developing just miles away. Bobby looked at Tyler, seeing his own excitement reflected in his son's eyes. Can you get this ship cleared for emergency operations? Bobby asked Catherine. Already done, she replied with a smile. I had Tom start preparations 20 minutes ago. Bobby laughed despite the tension. You were planning this before you asked my opinion? I was hoping you'd come to the same conclusion I did, Catherine corrected. But I needed to know you were ready for this level of responsibility. As if on cue, the ship's PA system crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Morrison. We've received an emergency request to assist a vessel in distress. For your safety, please return to your staterooms and prepare for rough weather. This should be resolved within a few hours. Bobby watched the party guests file out with surprising calm, obviously accustomed to the unexpected when traveling on a Rothschild maritime vessel. Tyler, he said, turning to his son, I want you to stay below deck. This could get dangerous. Dad, no way. Tyler protested. I know these ships better than almost anyone now. You need me up here. Bobby started to argue, then stopped. Tyler had proven his courage and capability 6 months ago. It was time to trust him as more than just a child. Okay, Bobby said finally, but you follow orders. No heroics. Understood. Tyler nodded solemnly. Understood. Catherine placed a hand on Bobby's shoulder. Ready to save the day again. Bobby looked out at the dark waters of Puget Sound, then at the woman who had changed his life and the son who had grown into someone he barely recognized. 6 months ago, he'd been a struggling single father with no prospects. Now he was leading a mission to protect American military assets from foreign sabotage. Let's go to work, he said. The bridge of the Catherine R had been transformed from a luxury liner's command center into something resembling a naval operations room. Multiple screens displayed radar contacts, weather information, and real-time communications with the threatened cargo vessel. Maritime Venture is maintaining course and speed, reported Communications Officer Janet Hayes. Captain Rodriguez confirms they're carrying the sensitive cargo we discussed. Bobby studied the tactical display, noting how the three unknown vessels had adjusted their positions. They're definitely moving to intercept. Professional naval formation, probably ex-military commanders. Any identification on the vessels themselves? Catherine asked. Tom Bradley looked up from his intelligence console. Negative. They're running completely dark, but based on size and speed characteristics, they appear to be modified patrol boats, fast, maneuverable, probably armed. Tyler approached with a tablet displaying ship specifications. Dad, I've been looking at the Maritime Venture's defensive options. She's got more than just water cannons. Bobby examined Tyler's research with growing interest. Active denial systems, acoustic weapons, even some electronic countermeasures. Why didn't you mention this earlier? He asked Catherine. Because officially, we don't arm merchant vessels, Catherine replied with a slight smile. But unofficially, ships carrying sensitive military cargo sometimes require enhanced protective measures. So, we're essentially looking at a Q ship, Bobby mused, referring to the armed merchant vessels used in both world wars. More or less, Catherine confirmed. The question is whether Captain Rodriguez and his crew are prepared to use those capabilities. Bobby keyed the radio. Maritime Venture, this is Rothschild Maritime Command. Captain Rodriguez, what's your crew's experience with your defensive systems? The reply came back immediately. Command, this is Rodriguez. My crew includes 4 Navy veterans, and we've drilled on defensive procedures monthly. We're ready for whatever comes. Excellent. Rodriguez, we're en route to provide support, but you may need to defend yourself before we arrive. Do you understand? Copy that. Command. We'll hold the line. Bobby turned to the bridge crew, feeling the familiar weight of command. All right, people. We've got American military assets under threat from unknown foreign actors. Our job is to ensure that cargo reaches its destination safely. Captain Morrison, a weathered veteran of 30 years at sea, nodded approvingly. What are your orders, sir? Bobby appreciated that the ship's regular captain was deferring to his tactical expertise rather than insisting on maritime protocol. Best possible speed to intercept. I want us between those patrol boats and the Maritime Venture before they can close to weapons range. Aye, sir. Engine room. This is the bridge. Emergency speed. All available power. The ship's vibration changed as the massive engines responded, the Catherine R surging forward through the dark waters. Bobby felt the deck shift beneath his feet and smiled grimly. It had been years since he'd felt a ship responding to battle stations. Contact bearing 270, range 8 miles, reported radar operator Lisa Chen. Multiple small craft, high speed, closing on the Maritime Venture. Time to intercept, Bobby asked. At current speed, approximately 45 minutes. Captain Morrison replied. Bobby studied the tactical display again. The unknown vessels were moving faster than anticipated, their intercept course suggesting sophisticated planning and real-time intelligence. They know exactly where the Maritime Venture is and what she's carrying, he concluded. This isn't a random piracy attempt. It's a targeted military operation. Catherine moved to stand beside him. Which means they probably know about us too. As if to confirm her words, the radio crackled with an unfamiliar voice speaking accented English. Rothschild vessel, Catherine R. You will alter course immediately and withdraw from this area. This is not your concern. Bobby took the microphone. Unknown vessel, this is the Catherine R. You are threatening American merchant vessels in international waters. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came back cold and professional. Our intentions are not your concern. Withdraw now or face the consequences. Tyler looked up from his console with alarm. Dad, I'm picking up weapons radar. They're targeting us. Bobby felt a chill of recognition. These weren't pirates or even irregular forces. They were professional military operators with sophisticated equipment. All hands, this is the bridge, Captain Morrison announced over the PA system. General quarters, general quarters. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. The transformation of the Catherine R from luxury liner to warship was remarkable. Hidden panels slid open to reveal defensive systems, while crew members who had been serving champagne an hour earlier now manned electronic warfare stations in damage control positions. Incoming, Tyler shouted from his radar console. Bobby looked up to see streaks of light racing across the water toward their position missiles, launched from the unknown patrol boats. Evasive maneuvers. Bobby ordered. Deploy countermeasures. Captain Morrison threw the ship into a hard turn to port, while defensive systems engaged automatically. Clouds of metallic chaff bloomed around the Catherine R as electronic jammers worked to confuse the incoming missiles. The first missile missed by 50 yards, its warhead detonating in the water close enough to shake the ship but not cause damage. The second missile was successfully decoyed by chaff, exploding harmlessly off their starboard beam. Damage report, Bobby called. No casualties, minimal structural damage, reported the engineering officer. All systems operational. Bobby felt a surge of professional satisfaction. The ship's crew was performing magnificently under pressure, their training evident in every action. Maritime Venture, this is command, Bobby radioed. You're about to have company. 3 fast attack craft, military-grade weapons. Suggest you implement defensive protocols immediately. Copy. Command. We're ready for them. On the tactical display, Bobby watched the 3 patrol boats split up, 2 continuing toward the cargo vessel, while 1 turned to engage the Catherine R. Classic divide-and-conquer tactics. They're trying to keep us busy while they take the Maritime Venture, Bobby realized. Tom, what kind of firepower can we bring to bear? Tom Bradley consulted his weapons status board. 2 20mm cannons, electronic warfare suite, and some surprises the Coast Guard doesn't know about. What kind of surprises? Catherine answered with a grim smile. The kind that ensure our military cargo reaches its destination, regardless of opposition. Hidden weapon mounts rose from concealed positions on the ship's superstructure, revealing modern naval cannons that definitely weren't standard equipment for a cruise liner. Jesus, Tyler breathed. This really is a Q ship. Language, Bobby corrected automatically, then grinned. But yeah, essentially, the attacking patrol boat was closing rapidly, its own weapons trained on the Catherine R. Bobby could see muzzle flashes as the enemy vessel opened fire with automatic weapons, bullets striking the water around them. Return fire, Bobby ordered. Target their propulsion system if possible. The Catherine R's concealed weapons replied with devastating accuracy. 20mm cannon shells walked across the patrol boat's stern, disabling its engines in a shower of sparks and smoke. The enemy vessel slowed to a stop, effectively out of the fight. 1 down, Tom reported with satisfaction. 2 to go, Bobby replied, watching the remaining patrol boats close on the Maritime Venture. And they're about to reach weapons range. The radio crackled with Captain Rodriguez's voice. Command, this is Maritime Venture. Taking fire from 2 vessels. Implementing defensive measures now. Bobby watched through binoculars as the cargo ship's hidden capabilities revealed themselves. What had appeared to be a standard merchant vessel suddenly bristled with defensive systems. Water cannons and sonic weapons driving back the attacking boats while hidden armor plating protected vital areas. "She's holding her own," Tyler observed with admiration. "For now," Bobby agreed. "But those patrol boats are persistent." As if to emphasize his point, one of the attacking vessels launched another missile at the maritime venture. This time the cargo ship's defensive systems couldn't deflect it entirely, and the warhead detonated against the vessel's reinforced hull. Maritime Venture report. Bobby called into the radio. "Command, we've taken a hit amidships. Some flooding, but damage control teams are responding. We can continue the fight." Bobby made a tactical decision that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. "Catherine, can this ship take more aggressive action?" "Define aggressive," Catherine replied, though her tone suggested she already knew what he was thinking. "Ramming speed," Bobby said simply. Captain Morrison's weathered face broke into a fierce grin. "Haven't heard that order in 30 years. Engineering. This is the bridge. Emergency power to engines. All ahead flank." The Catherine R surged forward like a racehorse given its head, her massive bulk cutting through the water at speeds that seemed impossible for such a large vessel. Bobby felt the deck vibrate with barely contained power as they closed the distance to the remaining patrol boats. "They're breaking off their attack," Tyler reported excitedly. Both vessels turning away from the maritime venture, but Bobby's tactical experience told him this wasn't retreat, it was repositioning. "They're regrouping for another attack. We need to end this now." The larger of the two patrol boats turned toward the Catherine R, apparently deciding that the cruise liner was the greater threat. Bobby could see the vessel's commander on the bridge, a tall figure directing his crew with military precision. "He's good," Bobby admitted grudgingly. "Professional tactical thinking." "Is that Marcus Blackwood?" Catherine asked, raising her own binoculars. Bobby focused on the enemy commander and felt his blood run cold. The tall, silver-haired figure was indeed Marcus Blackwood, now apparently serving as a military advisor to whatever foreign power was behind this attack. "It's him," Bobby confirmed. "And he's about to learn what happens when you threaten American interests." The two vessels closed on each other like medieval knights charging across a field. Weapons fire exchanged between them as each tried to gain tactical advantage. But the Catherine R's superior firepower was telling. "Their forward gun is disabled," Tom reported, "and we're taking minimal damage." Bobby watched Blackwood's patrol boat through his binoculars, noting how the enemy vessel was slowing and listing slightly to starboard. "They're hurt, closing to finish them off." But Blackwood had one more card to play. As the Catherine R approached the damaged patrol boat, Bobby saw something that made his heart stop. Tyler had left his console and was standing at the observation window, perfectly silhouetted against the bridge lights. "Tyler, get down," Bobby shouted, but it was too late. A sniper's bullet shattered the window, missing Tyler by inches and embedding itself in the bulkhead behind him. Bobby threw himself across the bridge, tackling his son to the deck as more shots followed. "I'm okay, Dad," Tyler gasped. "Just scared." Bobby helped Tyler to a safer position, his protective instincts warring with tactical necessity. "Stay down and stay behind cover." "That's an order." "Contact," the radar operator called. "Fourth vessel approaching from the north. Large signature. Military configuration." Bobby's heart sank. They'd been holding their own against 3 patrol boats, but a fourth vessel, especially a military one, could tip the balance decisively. "IFF signal received," the communications officer announced. "USS Chosin, Ticonderoga-class cruiser, requesting identification and status." Bobby felt a surge of relief so strong he had to steady himself against the navigation console. The U.S. Navy had arrived. "Chosin, this is Catherine R., Bobby replied over the radio. "We are American merchant vessels under attack by unknown foreign actors. Request immediate assistance." "Catherine R., this is Chosen. We have you on scope and are moving to assist. Hostile vessels are ordered to surrender immediately or face engagement by U.S. naval forces. The effect on the remaining patrol boats was immediate. The vessel that had been engaging the maritime venture immediately broke off and began fleeing at high speed. Blackwood's damaged boat attempted to follow, but its engine problems made escape impossible. "Unknown vessel, this is USS Chosen," came the crisp voice of the Navy commander. "You will stop engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with deadly force." Bobby watched through binoculars as Blackwood's patrol boat finally stopped, its crew raising their hands in surrender. The man who had tried to destroy Catherine's company and steal American military secrets was finally facing justice. "Well," Catherine said, moving to stand beside Bobby as Navy helicopters began circling the area. "That was more excitement than I was expecting from our Christmas party." Bobby laughed, the tension of the past few hours finally beginning to drain away. "Just another day at Rothschild Maritime." "Actually," Catherine replied with a smile, "this was fairly routine for our more sensitive operations." Tyler appeared at Bobby's side, having finally deemed it safe to leave cover. "Dad, do you realize what we just did? We fought off a military attack on American cargo." "We did indeed," Bobby agreed, ruffling his son's hair. "How does it feel to be a genuine hero?" "Pretty amazing," Tyler admitted, "but I think I'll stick to ship design. Less chance of getting shot at." Bobby laughed again, looking out at the dark waters where American naval forces were now securing the area and arresting the attackers. 6 months ago, he'd been fixing trucks and watching empty parking lots. Now he was helping protect national security interests, while his son designed revolutionary ships and earned scholarships to MIT. "Catherine," he said, turning to face the woman who had changed their lives so completely. "About that job offer?" "Yes. I think I'm ready for whatever comes next." Catherine smiled, and in that moment Bobby saw not the powerful CEO or the corporate warrior, but simply a woman who had found something she'd been looking for without knowing she was searching. "I was hoping you'd say that," she replied, "because there are a few more challenges ahead that will require exactly your kind of thinking." Bobby nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility that came with purpose. As the Coast Guard cutters arrived to assist with the prisoners and the maritime venture resumed her course to deliver her crucial cargo, he realized that this was exactly where he belonged, protecting the things that mattered, alongside people who shared his values. The struggling single father who had pulled a stranger from a crashed plane was gone. In his place stood a man who had found his calling in the most unexpected of circumstances, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with the woman who had given him a second chance at life and the son who had grown into someone he barely recognized but couldn't be prouder of. As the Catherine R. turned toward home, Bobby Mitchell stood on her bridge and watched the sun rise over the Pacific, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. 2 years later, the wedding took place aboard the Catherine R., anchored in the calm waters of Elliott Bay, with the Seattle skyline providing a dramatic backdrop. Bobby Mitchell stood at the altar in his navy dress blues, watching Catherine Rothschild walk down the aisle in a simple but elegant white dress that somehow managed to make her look both powerful and vulnerable. Tyler served as best man, resplendent in his MIT Naval Architecture Program uniform, having completed his first year with honors while simultaneously designing revolutionary new ship propulsion systems that had already attracted attention from major shipbuilders. "You clean up pretty well, Dad," Tyler whispered as Catherine approached. "Thanks, Anna, son," Bobby replied, never taking his eyes off the woman who had changed both their lives so completely. "How does it feel to be getting a stepmother who owns a fleet of ships?" "Pretty amazing," Tyler grinned, "especially since she's letting me design the next generation of cargo vessels." The ceremony was simple but moving, attended by a small group of friends and colleagues who had shared their extraordinary journey. Tom Bradley stood among the security detail, while Captain Morrison served as the ship's official representative. Even Dr. Sarah Kim had flown in from Pine Ridge, amazed at the transformation in both Bobby and Tyler. "Do you, Robert Mitchell, take Catherine to be your wife?" asked the chaplain. I do, Bobby said firmly, meaning it more than he'd ever meant anything in his life. Do you, Catherine Rothschild, take Robert to be your husband? I do, Catherine replied, her voice carrying the same certainty that had built a maritime empire. As they exchanged rings, Bobby thought about the chain of events that had brought them to this moment. A plane crash in a Montana snowstorm, a desperate rescue, and a series of challenges that had tested every aspect of their character and determination. You may kiss the bride, the chaplain announced. Bobby did, to enthusiastic applause from their guests and the ship's crew. When they broke apart, Catherine was smiling with an expression of pure joy that Bobby had never seen before. So, she said quietly, for his ears only. Ready for the next adventure. Bobby glanced around at the ship that had become their home, at the son who had grown into a remarkable young man, at the life they had built together through courage and determination. With you, he replied, I'm ready for anything. The reception lasted well into the evening, with toasts and stories that celebrated not just the union of two people, but the creation of a family forged in crisis and tempered by shared purpose. As the night grew late and the guests gradually departed, Bobby found himself alone with Catherine on the observation deck, looking out at the lights of Seattle. Any regrets? Catherine asked, settling into his embrace. Bobby thought about his modest house in Pine Ridge, about the simple life he'd left behind, about the man he'd been before a plane fell from the sky and changed everything. Not one, he said honestly. This is exactly where we're supposed to be. Catherine nodded, resting her head against his shoulder. I used to think success meant building the biggest company, making the most money, beating every competitor. And now I think success means finding someone who runs toward danger when others run away. Someone who puts principles before profit and family before everything else. Bobby smiled, remembering a struggling single father who had once thought his best days were behind him. That man could never have imagined standing on the deck of his own ship, married to one of the most powerful women in the world, watching his son prepare to change the future of maritime engineering. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For crashing into my life, Bobby replied, and Catherine laughed, the sound carrying across the water like a promise of adventures yet to come. As they stood together under the star-filled sky, Bobby Mitchell knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they had faced everything else together, with courage and with the unshakable belief that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. The struggling single father who had pulled a stranger from a plane crash was gone forever. In his place stood a man who had found love, purpose, and a future he never could have imagined, all because he had chosen to run toward danger when others would have run away. Sometimes, Bobby reflected as he held his new wife close, the best rescue you can make is allowing yourself to be rescued in return. The camera pulls back slowly from the wedding reception, Seattle's lights twinkling like stars against the dark water. They say fortune favors the bold, but sometimes fortune just looks like a man willing to run toward danger when everyone else runs away. Bobby Mitchell lost a simple life, the predictable rhythm of fixing engines and standing guard, the quiet certainty of knowing exactly where he stood in the world. But what he gained was immeasurable. The sound of laughter fades as the ship disappears into the night. He found love where he least expected it, in the ashes of a plane crash and the chaos of corporate warfare. He discovered that his son was capable of courage that rivaled his own. Most importantly, he learned that sometimes the life you're meant to live is hidden behind the one you're afraid to risk. A gentle swell rocks the ship as it heads toward the horizon. The struggling single father who pulled a stranger from the ice is gone forever. In his place stands a man who understands that the greatest victories aren't won in boardrooms or battlefields. They're won in the quiet moments when you choose to be someone worth saving. The screen fades to black. What would you risk everything for? What stranger would you pull from the wreckage, not knowing it would change your life forever?